Welcome back to the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. It's hard to believe, but we haven't done anything here since the month of May, since I was standing here, or at least around here, talking about Alex Palou's incredible victory in this year's Indianapolis 500. It's so great to be back. It's IMSA Riz this week. It's the Tire Rack Battle on the Bricks, 6 hours for the WeatherTech Sports Car Championship. Of course, a whole bunch of other championships as well racing this weekend. You've got Carrera Cup, Super Trofeo, Lamborghini. You've also got the Michelin Pilot Challenge Series, which will be streamed on YouTube live and free. Really a lot of cool things that are going to be happening here in the world of IMSA. We'll be covering a lot of the storylines throughout this weekend. But of course, there's been a big news break in the IndyCar world. And it's not something that's necessarily surprising, but I think it's something that we need to talk about, and that is that David Malukas has officially signed for Team Penske in the number 12 Verizon Chevrolet for next year's IndyCar Series. And not only that, it is described as a multi-year deal. Now, what exactly that means, typically when we hear multi-year deal means 2 years plus a 1-year option, whether that's driver or team. Now, that's typically what it means. I haven't seen the contract, so I don't know exactly what it is. But I think this whole David Malukas thing warrants a more in-depth discussion than just, hey, David Malukas is driving for Penske. So I want to bring in my co-host from Unverified, Kyle Cuthbertson, to help me talk through this. Well, we're here with Kyle, and of course, Kyle, we love your contributions to this channel. You know, a lot of times, you call yourself the ghost writer of this channel sometimes. It's really not that wrong. Kyle a lot of times comes up with incredible ideas that we run with, and then it's like, then I end up looking smart for it. So I guess we'll start with that segue. Will Penske look smart making this move? Because the thing with David Malukas is that, unlike a lot of the other Team Penske hires, and you know, it's kind of been interesting because there's been a lot of talk about the way that Joseph Newgarden was hired and where he came from CFH Racing, which was a team that was capable of winning races, but it was kind of on the level of a Foyt or a Juncos or whatever. You know, you look at Scott McLaughlin, who had really no recent background in open wheel racing. He gets moved into the IndyCar seat. And so I think there's a lot of people looking at Team Penske these days and thinking, oh, they're going unconventional. But Scott McLaughlin, 3-time champion in the supercars, winner at Bathurst 1000, you know, proven driver. Joseph Newgarden was winning in equipment that was mid-pack at best. David Malukas has yet to do really any of that. He's been a race leader, a pole position winner, a top 3 finisher at the Indianapolis 500. But is there enough there right now for Penske to take this risk on David Malukas?
Yeah, I think it's great that you mentioned Joseph Newgarden, because I was actually thinking about this. Dave Malukas reminds me a lot of Joseph Newgarden, but minus the Indy Lights Championship and minus already having a race victory. I mean, I see a young kid that, you know, is definitely scoring points with the paddock and the fan base by, you know, his social media and just his off-track personality, and just I think the way he carries himself is very similar to what we saw with Joseph from 2012 to 2016. And I hope him going to Penske doesn't take away any of that. But yeah, obviously with McLaughlin and Joseph, both proven winners, and Malukas really isn't that yet. He's a race leader. And I think, honestly, what kind of separates him from Joseph is you look at his career in IndyCar so far. He's only ran 2 seasons with the same team. And since then, he's, you know, kind of looks like Connor Daly right now, where he's got 4 different numbers on his belt that he's driven in the past. So I think next year, it's going to be a proving year, right? He's got to prove why he got that seat. And, you know, but when you look at the Penske side of it as well, this is a team that's struggled. So I think, honestly, to look at it, I think I would go into next year with no expectations for David Malukas. I think he's going to be really good in qualifying. I think he's going to qualify really well. He's proven that he can be in the Fast 6 every week. But outside of that, not a lot of expectations. Now, year 2, it's very nice to see that this is a multi-year deal. We talked about that on Unverified. I think it was very important that what they did with the contract, because he had 1 year left going before.
With Foyt.
With Foyt,
yeah.
He had 1 year left, and they've extended him for Penske, so we know he's there at least until the end of 27. So, yeah, I mean, I would low expectations for next year, but he definitely has to prove himself within the next 2 years, or else that'll be it.
Well, and I think it's important to note, because I think a lot of people are probably going to incorrectly draw a comparison to like a Nolan Siegel or a Kiffin Simpson, drivers who have yet to prove themselves getting in a big seat. I think a lot of people forget that David has already been hired by one of the biggest teams in IndyCar, Arrow McLaren. Now that wrist injury prevented him from proving himself in that car, but even so, when he got fired from McLaren, he ended up right at Shank. And my understanding was always that when he was looking for a place to sign for 2025, the decision came down to Meyer Shank and Foyt because of the development path. It was almost like, it's almost like how we look at it in Formula One, where you pick a junior team, quote unquote, and you kind of say, what's the best shot of me getting to a top team? And so from Meyer Shank's perspective, of course, there was that partnership with Ganassi coming in, and I guess you could look at maybe the 9 car as, will that become available in the next few years? And you're betting that against, will the 12 car become available in the next couple of years? Clearly, I would say for David and his family, they made the right choice to go to Foyt, or because that was the right path at the right time. And Penske has seen enough of him that they offered Will Power a 1-year contract, and Will Power said, nope, I'm good, I'm walking, I'm going to Andretti. So, and that opened up the gate for David. So I guess, kind of talk about that a little bit, Kyle, because I think we need to definitely separate David. He's definitely a cut above the rest of these prospects that we talk about, these young drivers in IndyCar, because he has been on everybody's radar for a very long time.
Right.
And people just forget that.
Yeah, I mean, he's been definitely one of the prospects. He has that experience, right? You look at the Penske pool right now of drivers that they have in Miles Rowe and Max Garcia. Max going into his first year of next season. Miles Rowe getting, I believe it'll be his 3rd or 2nd.
Yep.
And they're just not experienced and ready right now. And that's going back to what I said, how the next 2 years are going to be proving, because at the end of 2027, what says Max Garcia isn't ready? What says Miles Rowe isn't ready to take that seat? And then you also have to look at, Joseph, he'll have a contract year, and Scott is on a long-term contract, but there's always kind of that, the little rumor and speculation that Townsend gave
Which
us.
I just completely, it's horse pucky. He ain't going to NASCAR.
Well, I'm just saying, it's in the realm of possibility. We've seen crazier things but yeah, I mean, definitely at the right time. He made the right decision, but he's always been at the top of everyone's radar. And it's nice to see him get a second chance, because I think after the injury and he got let go from McLaren, a lot of us kind of worried that he wasn't going to be able to show truly what he had at a top team. But it will be proving. I mean, it's interesting because you and I talked a little bit before in Penske, and like you kind of mentioned, it's out of the realm a little bit for them to sign a new driver, someone a little bit more unproven. But then you look back at the late 90s, when they had a car that they built that wasn't actually that great, and through, I believe it was 99, they had a couple drivers here and there that weren't full-time that they were trying out. Wasn't really normal for Penske. And could we be seeing them kind of in a similar place?
Yeah, I think, all we've been doing this entire year has been comparing this Team Penske season, meaning the previous, 2025, to 1999, where they had pretty much the worst combination of things. They essentially had a year-old chassis with the PC27. Now they updated a little bit, but it was a 1998 car essentially on the worst tire, the Goodyear, with what at the time was the worst engine, the Mercedes-Benz. And all of that combination, and Allister Jr., who was starting to really get some personal problems in his life, so he wasn't the same. They had a second car, as you mentioned, that they started trying drivers out. Gonzalo Rodriguez, who looked like he was going to work out until he got killed, unfortunately, in a practice session at Laguna Seca driving a Penske car. Tarso Marquez, I think, drove for them at Long Beach. Alex Barron finished out the season. But the thing about 1999, and the thing that might be the story with Team Penske in 2026, is that Penske took things very, very seriously when they hit rock bottom in 1999. They totally rebuilt the team. Allister Jr. left. The second car became available, open. They said, we need to commit to one driver. They originally chose Gilles de Ferran and Greg Moore. Unfortunately, Greg was killed at Fontana that year, so then his contract went to Helio Castroneves, ultimately caused Helio a lot of tax issues later in life. But that team rebuilt. They got Firestone tires. They got a Honda engine. They got a Reynard chassis. They did everything that they needed to do to correct the issue. And then they had two solid drivers who ended up winning. Gilles won 2 kart championships, then Elio won 2 Indy 500s. Gilles won an Indy 500, in a very short period of time. So this hasn't been the massive rebuild. We're not seeing engine changes. We're not seeing, we're seeing major management changes with Jonathan Duguid taking over at the IndyCar Team Penske. But, you're still going to see that consistency with Joseph and Scott. Malukas is really the big difference, and then whatever management changes they end up making in the offseason, that's going to be the key with Team Penske. So yeah, I love that. I love it when we tie the history in, because it is so interesting with Team Penske where they are, the historical comparisons, and the fact that we're now seeing another kind of unproven driver, really, and like you said, looking through the history, they don't do this. So either they're taking a really big risk, or they see something that a lot of the paddock has already seen and believes in David Malukas, even though the results haven't officially been there yet.
Yeah, I think you tied it up pretty perfectly there. I think it adds a lot of context, honestly, to go back into the past to see a similar situation. And when you talk about what they've done the last time they hit rock bottom, which they certainly did this year, I think next year, mark this video down, timestamp it. I think the trio of Joseph Newgarden and McLaughlin and Malukas will be a tremendous trio going into the 500 next year. We're definitely going to be spending that April gap in the schedule during the open testing, I think, talking about how are they going to perform after things that have happened this year. I think those three are probably the favorites. We saw how strong they actually were, minus the penalties during the race. And I think we gave them a lot of judgment after dropping Will Power and kind of the way they treated him. But I think you kind of it's Team Penske, man. You have to just kind of trust the process of what they're doing, that they see something in David Malukas, and now we're just on for the ride.
If there was one question, I suppose I would say that since you pointed out Joseph, Scott, and David as that crew, I guess I'll say one positive, one negative. You mentioned that Indianapolis 500. I think that's going to be an extremely strong team when we get back here in May. 3-car combination. You think about David Malukas, what he's been able to do in literally every other car that he's been in. You actually get him in a real-life Penske car. I think that's going to be awesome. But there have been moments where Joseph, Scott, and David all hate each other. I think team chemistry, getting those three drivers back on the same page without Will Power in there to kind of be the mediator, be the levity in the room. I think back to Gateway a couple of years ago. All three of those drivers are on the podium. All three of those drivers were not happy with each other at the end of Gateway. Now, you're not saying that those grudges last all that long, but race car drivers never forget.
Yeah.
So I'm curious about how that will happen and how much the girls will fight at Team Penske next year.
It's interesting because you're right. Will Power was kind of like the mediator in the middle. Like Joseph and Scott would get a little heated towards each other,
a little chippy,
and Malukas as well. At Gateway. And Will was always kind of in the middle. I think Will would get frustrated with him, but being a veteran and having those probably 8 to 10 years more experience kind of saw the bigger picture and was able to kind of be that mediator. So you're right. It's going to be interesting to see, how that trio kind of handles themselves.
So let us know what you think about David Malukas to Team Penske. It's always cool to have opportunities like this. Thankfully, IMSA is here. It's going to be a lot of fun this weekend. We've got a ton of coverage. We've got something else with Team Penske brewing tomorrow. So I'm going to wink and nod and say you guys are going to like it, especially if you like old ALMS like I do. But anyway, for Kyle, this has been David Land. Thank you guys so much for watching. Subscribe for more IndyCar content. Leave me a comment. Like the video. It helps us all out. Helps us do cool things like this. We'll see you in the next video.